In the Bible, we find stories of remarkable individuals who faced monumental challenges. One such example is Job, a righteous man who endured unimaginable trials, losing his health, wealth, and loved ones. Job teaches us that, even in the most difficult moments, we must trust in God's sovereignty and persevere in our faith amidst the greatest adversities. His story not only illustrates the importance of unwavering faith, but also demonstrates how patience and trust in God can be rewarded with restoration and abundant blessing. Before we proceed, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, give a like, and comment if you love biblical stories. Another biblical hero was Moses, the divinely inspired lawgiver of Israel, prophet and leader. He was called by God to lead the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt. Before their departure, Moses celebrated the first Passover, a meal ordained by God. On this occasion, Israelites sacrificed a spotless lamb and marked the doorposts of their homes with its blood, so that the angel of death would pass over them and spare their firstborn. The meal consisted of roasted lamb, unleavened bread, and bitter herbs, symbolizing the haste of their departure and the bitterness of slavery. This meal became a fundamental cornerstone of Israel's identity, reminding them of divine deliverance and their covenant with God. Moses guided the Israelites through the desert, facing hunger, thirst, and Pharaoh's resistance. His determination and faith in God enabled him to overcome all obstacles on the way to the Promised Land. During this journey, people of Israel faced internal challenges, including doubts and questions about Moses' authority. They needed to learn to live as a free people again, which required profound changes in their customs and values. God's laws given to Moses represented these changes. Despite this, Moses trusted God and moved forward, serving as an example of courage and determination. For example, in Exodus 16, the Israelites murmured against Moses and Aaron due to the lack of bread, and God responded by sending manna from heaven to feed them daily. The lack of water was also a significant concern. In Exodus 17, the Israelites were thirsty and complained again, and Moses, following God's instructions, brought water from the rock at Horeb. Before leaving Egypt, the Israelites faced Pharaoh's resistance. After a series of plagues, Pharaoh finally allowed them to leave but changed his mind and pursued them to the Red Sea. According to the biblical narrative, God parted the sea for the Israelites to cross and then closed it over the Egyptians. There were instances of rebellion against Moses' leadership. A notable example is the rebellion of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, who challenged his authority. As a result, the earth swallowed them, and fire consumed 250 men who offered incense. The people also complained about the lack of meat and expressed longing for the food in Egypt. God then sent quail to satisfy their hunger, but also brought a plague as punishment for their discontent. One of the first significant battles the Israelites faced was against the Amalekites at Rephidim. Moses ascended a hill with the staff of God in his hand, and as long as he held his hands up, the Israelites prevailed in the battle. Exodus 17:8-16. Next, we have David, who faced significant challenges, from defeating the giant Goliath to surviving King Saul's persecutions and overcoming political obstacles. His journey culminated in a 40-year reign over Israel, yet he always trusted in God, found strength in his presence. David teaches us that even in the face of adversity, we must seek God and depend entirely on him. In addition to his military and political victories, David's writings in the Bible, especially the Psalms, are a profound expression of his devotion and intimate relationship with God. The Psalms not only reflect his moments of worship and praise, but also his emotional struggles, sincere repentance, and unwavering trust in divine providence. These writings, widely recognized for their poetic beauty and spiritual depth, continue to resonate with people of faith throughout the centuries, inspiring and comforting those who face challenges similar to David's. One of the most significant aspects of David's life was the promise of the Messiah. He received the assurance that one of his descendants would establish an eternal kingdom. This promise not only solidified David's legacy as the king of Israel, but also played a crucial role in messianic prophecy, profoundly shaping the hope and faith of God's people through the ages. The promise was made to David through the prophet Nathan, who declared that God would establish a descendant of David to rule forever over Israel. This Messiah would not only restore the kingdom's glory and justice, also bring universal salvation and redemption. Despite his faults and adversities, David found solace and confidence in the certainty that God would fulfill his promises through his lineage. This promise is central to both the Old and New Testaments, linking Israel's history to the advent of Jesus Christ, who is recognized as the ultimate fulfillment of the messianic prophecy. Jesus, a descendant of David, as presented in the genealogies of the Gospel, not only reaffirmed this promise, but also established an eternal spiritual kingdom, bringing salvation not just to Israel, but to all humanity. Thus, the promise of the Messiah to David not only illustrates God's faithfulness in keeping his promises, but also stands as a powerful testimony of the divine plan, the redemption and restoration of his people, through Jesus Christ. This promise transcends time and continues to be a cornerstone of Christian faith, reminding believers of the unbroken connection between the Old Testament prophecies and their fulfillment in the New Testament. It serves as a beacon of hope, affirming that God's plan is sovereign and all-encompassing, guiding history towards a grand narrative of salvation. The lineage of David, culminating in the birth of Jesus, underscores the meticulous and purposeful unfolding of God's redemptive work, inviting all to partake in the eternal kingdom established by Christ. Allow me to present the story of Ruth, a woman whose life exemplifies profound faith and unwavering devotion to God. Ruth faced the challenge of being a foreign widow after the death of her husband, Naomi's son. In a remarkable act of loyalty and love, Ruth chose to stay by her mother-in-law Naomi's side and accompanied her back to Bethlehem, leaving behind her homeland of Moab. In Bethlehem, Ruth found herself in a vulnerable position as a foreigner, relying on divine providence and the generosity of others. She decided to glean in the fields of Boaz, a distant relative of her late husband. Through her diligence and virtue, Ruth gained the attention and respect of Boaz, who recognized her piety and dedication to God. Ruth's story is a lasting testimony of loyalty, courage, and trust in God. By following Naomi's wise counsel, Ruth exhibited remarkable wisdom and humility. She showed an unwavering trust in God. This could be relying on his provision and guidance in all difficult times. At the end of the harvest, Boaz demonstrated his generosity and commitment by fulfilling his role as a close relative. He took steps to ensure the safety and well-being of Ruth and Naomi, which culminated in his marriage to Ruth. This act not only brought dignity to Ruth and Naomi, but also had significant repercussions in the messianic lineage, as Ruth became an ancestor of King David, and subsequently, Jesus Christ. Ruth's story not only encourages us to embody loyalty, courage, and unwavering trust in God, but it also illustrates the profound impact that our faithfulness and actions can have on the greater narrative of God's plan. Her life demonstrates how God can use our seemingly small acts of devotion and integrity to weave us into his larger story of redemption and blessing. Just as Ruth's commitment led to her becoming part of the lineage of the Messiah, our own acts of faithfulness and trust can also contribute to a broader divine purpose, affirming that even in the most ordinary circumstances, God's plans for us are extraordinary and far-reaching. The lives of Job, Moses, David, and Ruth stand as living testimonies of how trust in God can guide us from an existence marked by trials to a life filled with blessings. Despite the numerous tribulations they faced, they never abandoned their faith and trust in the Creator. Instead, they found strength and courage in God, moved forward, even when the situation seemed desperate. These examples teach us that even when hope appears scarce, we can find solace and guidance in God. By fully trusting in his wisdom and love, we are empowered to persevere through adversity, knowing that he is in control and has a greater plan for our lives. May the stories of these biblical characters inspire us to cultivate an unwavering trust in God, to seek courage in facing challenges, and to persevere in our journey of faith. May we learn from their precious examples, and like them, experience the transformation from a life marked by hardships to a blessed life, always remaining faithful to our Creator. I also take this opportunity to express my profound gratitude to each of you and for the chance to share these messages of faith and hope. May the Lord continue to bless and guide you on your spiritual journey. Subscribe to our channel for more videos about the Bible. Until the next video, dear brothers and sisters.